All right, it is time for another reading from the stunningly good work of literature that is a memoir by Jacinda Ardern called A Different Kind of Power. I take you back now to 2014 in the aftermath of the election, which was contested with David Cunliffe as leader of the Labour Party. I go to page 161 of this soon-to-be classic book, currently number 3 on the New York Times non-fiction bestseller list. David, how do you feel about the results tonight? It was election night. I stood in our small Auckland Central headquarters with party volunteers watching on a screen as a journalist pursued David Cunliffe through a throng of supporters. David ignored the questions, smiling and nodding at people in the crowd. Even though the night wasn't over, it was our party vote I was following now, and it didn't look good. That we had lost the election was not in question. The only question remaining was how devastating would the loss be? As numbers ticked across the screen in front of us, I knew I was going back to Parliament through the party list. There again, the narcissistic. Oh, it didn't matter. I was Jake. But only just. Barely. I wondered how many of my colleagues would lose their seats. But I knew I had mine. I adjusted the fitted red lace dress I had got specially for the night. And this time with shoes I hoped didn't make my ankles look fat. Cankles. This is that sort of detail. She bought shoes, election night 2014, that she hoped didn't make her ankles look fat. Good job she's not all into image. Good job there's something deeper about Jacinda Ardern. My mum stood nearby, smiling and talking to people she had got to know during my campaign. She had spent much of the past month keeping our small headquarters going, always ready to collect phone canvassing data, feed a returning door knocker, or hand a towel to a bedraggled leaflet deliverer, all the while wearing a top that said, "My daughter is a candidate and all I got was this T-shirt." Oh, that's funny, isn't it? Ha, ha, ha. I knew I needed to say a few words, but I dreaded it. What was there to say? The volunteers had worked so hard, and not just for the sake of victory, or not even because we all wanted to do something that mattered about the climate crisis, deepening child poverty and homelessness, and making our ankles look skinny. It pained me to see their grim expressions as they consoled themselves with drinks or spoke in small solemn circles. As I stepped up onto the small raised stage at the back of the studio, there were cheers and clapping. "Your ankles look good," they said. No, they didn't. I swallowed hard a few times and delivered my word of thanks, my eyes glancing ever so often to the back of the room. That's where Clark stood. He leaned against the wall, watching me carefully, returning my glance with a reassuring smile. I climbed off the stage, and then Clark was next to me. He put an arm around my shoulder and told me he'd booked a nearby hotel. Tonight was the night. "Tomorrow you can sleep in and have a big breakfast," he said. It was 2 a.m. By the time we finally got to the hotel and crawled into bed, Labour had not merely lost. We'd had our worst result since 1922, getting just 25% of the party vote. Sure, I'd be a list MP, but I'd lost my third bid to represent a district. As Clark switched off the bedside light, it all hit me. Not just the day's outcome, but the past few months, the past few years. I knew we were about to head back into the same ugly turmoil, the same negativity. Worst of all, we were still helpless to roll out the policy I was so convinced were needed. I began to cry. Big despairing sobs. Like a garden sprinkler. No, she didn't use the garden sprinkler there. Clark didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Instead, he hugged me tightly, and I cried myself to sleep. At least my ankles look good. I added in the last line. That wasn't real. There we have it, the latest gripping instalment from A Different Kind of Power. Night of Passion, post the election 2014. Interesting stuff.